Good morning, everyone. I'm Jeffrey from Parker Dewey. Really excited to be here and just so fired up about the partnership and work we've been doing with Wayne State. Today, we're going to spend about 30 minutes on this session going through a quick overview of just an incredible program they're spearheading. A couple of housekeeping notes. First, we will be sharing the recording and the slides afterwards. You'll get an email in the next day or so with all of that. Second, as I mentioned earlier, the chat is open, so feel free to use that for any questions, comments, etc. We'll leave some time at the end for Q&A, but again, I'm usually pretty good at keeping one eye on the chat over here, so I can try to answer things as we go through. So with that, let's get rolling. The agenda for today is pretty straightforward. We'll give a quick overview of what's going on in early career recruiting. We'll talk a little bit about what a micro-internship is, just for people not familiar. And then what we're going to get to is actionable strategies that you can apply right now. Again, we recognize where we are in campus recruiting season. Some people are in the heart of it at career fairs, hosting interviews. Others are still planning and thinking about what they're going to need come this spring and summer. We'll talk about, again, ways you can leverage this incredible program from Wayne State, irrespective of where you are. And as I said, we'll leave some time for Q&A. As quick background, Parker Dewey, for those of you not familiar with us, we are a decade-old organization. We are 100% focused on helping improve the college to career transitions for organizations and do so in a way that supports students and colleges and universities as well. We have a nationwide network of millions of college students and recent grads from across just a plethora of post-secondary programs, community colleges, four-year masters, boot camps, and other training programs. And 100% of the students on the platform are here because they want to learn about your organizations, demonstrate skills, and ultimately find the right full-time role. So let's jump into it. Challenges in early career recruiting. I'm sure y'all are feeling this firsthand. We know the cost per hire continues to rise. It's north of $6,000 according to the National Association of Colleges and Employers. That doesn't even fully take into account the amount of time we're spending in interviews, scheduling, rescheduling, dealing with travel, hosting different sessions and planning and everything else. On top of it, about 50% of recent college grads leave their first job within the first year. Again, very much depends on the role, depends on the company, but according to several surveys, it's about 35 to 45%. What we also hear directly from the students is that they are saying the current recruiting process doesn't work for them. Over 70% said it doesn't let them demonstrate skills. But as we'll talk about, there's other challenges. It doesn't encourage them to explore different career paths, to want to learn about different companies, to build those relationships. What we're going to talk about is how you can use the Parker Dewey platform and micro-internships to really overcome those challenges, essentially to help you engage and assess sort of those great hires earlier in the process. So imagine being able to have a pool of candidates engaged before you visit Wayne State or any college. Students who are excited to visit your career fair booth or info session, students who are excited to apply for your roles, not because they have to, but because they're genuinely interested. Imagine being able to, when you're on campus, have meaningful discussions with the students, not sort of rehashing what's on your website or just hearing the elevator pitch, but actually talking about the specific roles and how students can approach them and why they're the right fit. Or being able to keep candidates excited after you're on campus. Again, we all know we get the lists of names and people who come by the career fair booths or the info sessions, or we meet in classroom assignments, but then there's nothing. Yes, we're sending emails and maybe there's a little bit of back and forth, but it's pretty superficial until you're actually ready to start going into that hiring process, the interviews and everything else. And at that point, sort of a lot of that relationship you built has gotten lost. And it's not just the juniors and seniors, it could be the first and second year students who are most hungry to do that exploration. Or imagine if you had insights on the actual interests of a student and their skills earlier in the process, not just through click, 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 I'm applying to everything, or I have a certain GPA or major, but actual insights based upon real work. And even if you can't be there, being able to engage students from Wayne State or other schools. Or maybe you're not located in Michigan, but you know the benefit of hiring Wayne State students for your company in Ohio or Indiana or Illinois or California. This is a great way to do that. Everything we're talking about is experiential recruiting. Experiential recruiting is the intersection of employer branding and skills-based hiring. And when we talk about employer branding, it's not what kind of swag or t-shirts you're giving away at a career fair. It's not even just brand recognition. Nike has an employer branding issue. Every college student knows Nike, but they're not thinking about it for data analytics or AI or tech or marketing or HR. They're thinking about it for very specific roles. And for those organizations that may not be as well known, whether they're massive Fortune 500 companies that just aren't known by college students, or smaller businesses that are below the radar, how do you build that brand with the students to drive interest and awareness? The second half of experiential recruiting is skills-based hiring. This is a very, very hot topic in the HR community. It's how we hire individuals who are later in their career, not based upon where they go to school or their major or their GPA or who they know. We're hiring based upon our assessment of their skills to do a role. This is what we're bringing to the early career side. It's about understanding what someone brings to the table, not just technical skills. Can they code in Python or use Excel, or how well do they know an applicant tracking system, but also those core skills, the problem solving, communication, coachability, teamwork. This is skills-based hiring. Micro-internships essentially sit at the intersection of those two things. They provide a tool to drive the employer branding and the skills-based hiring. So if we were together, I'd ask by a show of hands how many of you have heard of micro-internships, but since we're not and my Zoom skills are not up to snuff, I won't try to figure out how to do it virtually. And I'll give you the 10-second overview. Micro-internship, thank you, Sarah. Micro-internships are short-term paid professional projects completed by college students, not as a replacement for the summer internship or the full-time role or the career fair or the interview, but as a complement. Think about them almost like going on a date, where the summer internship is like an engagement, the full-time role is getting married. And again, we're going to share the slides so you'll have all of the details, but the takeaway is these are 10, 20, 30-hour projects that you're giving to college students as a way for them to learn about your organization and for you to assess their skills. They can take place year-round. You're not limited from a time perspective. There's no onboarding or sensitive information being shared, so you don't have to stress about that. And it provides a way to, again, get insights into those candidates. One thing I will note, beyond the fact that there's no HR administrative burden, is these micro-internships are paid. Tends to shake out about $200, $300, $400 per project that's paid to the student. But it's important for a couple of reasons. One, not only is it fair, but it also ensures you're getting access to the breadth of students that you want, not just the rich kids who can afford to do unpaid work for free, but you're able to make sure that that student who's working in a part-time job who could be a perfect fit is still able to participate, is still able to get their foot in the door, and you're getting insights on their skills. Now, as opposed to it being hypothetical, I'll share some examples. One of the things we do at Parker Dewey is companies will send us job descriptions for their entry-level roles or summer internships. Like this example you can see on the screen, the entry-level data marketing role. We at Parker Dewey will unpack these into specific projects that both can be completed by the students without you needing to onboard or share data or give access to systems, but also will give you insights into their skills. So for instance, for this project, let's have a student do a competitive campaign analysis. We want them to look at how competitors are doing various things with marketing and compare it to what we're doing and provide recommendations. Yeah, it's a helpful project. Someone on the marketing team would probably really appreciate that. But as a recruiting tool, it's driving interest in your organization, but also giving you insights into their skills, both the technical ones, as I alluded to before. Can they do market research? but also those other core skills. What's their problem solving like, their attention to detail, their presentation? We see this with roles that require an on-site presence. So again, this is a production operator role. A micro internship, you're not going to put them on a factory floor working with a piece of $1 million equipment, but let's have them develop a training manual or research best practices tied to a specific type of equipment. Again, it's great if the organization actually wants that manual to be developed, but more importantly, it gives that student an opportunity to showcase his or her skills, both the technical ones, do they understand that piece of machinery, but also, again, communication, critical thinking. We'll see this with development roles in IT, again, not giving them access to your core code base or the technical kernel, but let's have them do user experience testing. One of the things you'll notice is that every step of the way is an assessment. You're getting real insights into candidates, both when they apply. Are they a self-starter and motivator? Are they having real interest in your organization? Are they showing attention to detail? As they're working on the projects, you're getting insights. How do they communicate? Do they take feedback? Are they turning the work in on time? And then from the final work product, and I'll show you some examples as we go through, you're able to see, again, problem solving, intellectual curiosity, professionalism. These are the core skills that we know make the difference between great hires and people that don't work out. We also know they're the most difficult to assess from the traditional recruiting process. This is what we're teasing out. So it provides tremendous value for employers. Why do students participate? As I alluded to before, this is how they want to be recruited. In fact, 95% of college students said these real paid short-term work experience are how they want to learn about roles and demonstrate their skills. They're not doing it for the money, though, as I said, money makes it accessible. They're doing it because they're genuinely interested in your organization. In fact, 75% of college students said they want to begin career exploration during their first or second years, but oftentimes internships aren't available until they're juniors or seniors, almost until it's too late to have that ability to influence. Now, again, organizations talk about early career programs and doing info sessions and other things. This is a complement. So let's jump into the next part. We'll talk about a few very specific strategies that you can apply right now. We'll talk about how you can use this before the career fairs or the info sessions or the on-campus visits to drive interest from students. We'll talk about how you can use micro-internships after those visits to keep the students engaged and warm and to build those relationships that lead to a competitive advantage in converting. We'll talk about how the projects can be used to evaluate candidates earlier in the process, before the interview, before the phone screen. And again, if you can't visit Wayne State this year, how you can still use these projects to reach and engage those students. So let's jump in. The first example was a leading hospital system that was really focused on both getting a competitive advantage, because we know how competitive allied health is and the huge shortage of individuals graduating with those degrees, but they were also interested in engaging students that might not have been considering healthcare. Again, those first or second year students that thought the only roles in healthcare required going to medical school or nursing school. They also realized they had other roles outside of healthcare. So one of the things they did was identified some tough to fill roles, and we created micro-internships around them and very much targeted specific student populations, both at schools they were already visiting, but also those they weren't. In fact, this organization was able to show up on campus, whoops, went the wrong way. This organization was able to show up on campus and already have a pool of engaged candidates. Again, before they showed up, both the candidates that likely would have come to HCA's career fair booth because they were interested in healthcare, but also the students studying marketing or finance or data analytics, or students who were studying other areas of STEM and hadn't considered that. And not only were they able to see which students were excited, but they were able to see actual feedback on how the students were performing on these projects so they could really prioritize who they were meeting with. The next example talks about keeping students engaged after events. This is a medical device company. Again, global business, but it doesn't have a brand name that sort of rolls off the tongue. They also were interested in very specific student populations. So they were showing up to the career fair and they were focused on students studying mechanical engineering because it was medical devices, and also student athletes. Because as a medical device company, a lot of student athletes actually had their devices in their bodies. In addition, they were hiring for business development roles, which were typically very tough to fill, and a lot of students weren't necessarily considering. So one of the things this organization was doing was highlighting the micro internships both before the event to drive interest in the booth and after the event to keep them warm. What they did was they created a audition project tied to the business development roles. They were targeting very specific students tied to geographic preferences and other goals. And after the event, they were giving students opportunities to work on these business development auditions. So instead of just blasting the email saying, thanks for your interest, we'll be releasing job applications soon, instead these students had opportunities to go actually work on these projects. What was happening is they were able to reach students, first of all, from over 1,000 colleges and universities, not just who saw the projects, but actually applied. They were able to keep the students engaged. They talked about the fact that their hiring results were off the charts. Of the students selected for full-time roles following this audition, 100% of them were still at the company over a year and a half later, including one who got an Employee of the Year award. In addition, hiring managers loved it because they were able to get insights on the skills earlier in the process. The third example is a national fitness chain that was struggling, especially with sourcing and selection. They had a well-known brand. Again, my wife talks about it constantly because she goes. But a lot of students weren't really thinking about roles with this organization at corporate. They thought the only roles this organization was offering were being a trainer at one of their facilities or at the front desk. They also recognized that when they were hiring, it was really difficult to make great decisions because there was such limited data. This organization also had these always on projects within the HR team itself, not talent acquisition, but within learning and development. So what they did was they created a micro internship tied to new hire onboarding best practices, and they selected 5 students to do it. One of the students they selected was a 3.9 GPA who was an HR major from a highly prestigious school. They also gave another student the project, a student with a lower GPA who was a general business major, a little bit more unsure about HR, but they decided to give her a shot. There was something from the short answer that excited her. This was the work product the 2 students turned in. I'm sure you can guess where my story is going to go, but the one on the top was the student with the very high GPA from the great school. It might be a little tough to see on your screen, but there's some typos and grammatical errors, and clearly the presentation wasn't as great. The student below was the one they were a little bit more unsure about. She did a kick butt job, as the hiring manager said. Fast forward, she actually wound up doing a summer internship there and then a full-time role. And in the words of the hiring manager, this is someone we probably wouldn't have even interviewed based upon the GPA or the resume. Again, this really improves that selection process. The final example is about if you can't be on campus, or as a lot of us are facing right now, how do you get the data to demonstrate the effectiveness of what you're doing, both in future decision-making, but also internally? This example was a global Fortune 500 water technology company. They had a limited campus recruiting effort. They were trying to scale up. They were trying to both, again, defend the program they had. They had some geographic needs and couldn't be at all the other campuses, but they were also trying to convey to the C-suite the importance of early career recruiting, especially with all of the noise going on. So they posted some projects, again, tied to tough to fill geographies that they had, not just their DC headquarters. They engaged actually a number of their employee resource groups tied to some other strategic initiatives. And ultimately, they wound up with this. They wound up with students that had ties to their geographic regions, irrespective of where they were going to school. And as I said, not just DC, but some harder to fill places like Holland, Michigan, or Uniontown, Pennsylvania. They had data to share internally, whether it was around cost per hire, cost per school, or other metrics around conversion. They were able to see the impact tied to other strategic goals, such as gender equity within STEM. This was a game-changing opportunity. And again, it works for employers because it's accessible and applicable anywhere you are in the process, whether it's the very top about driving interest, whether it's deeper in the funnel, where it's about assessing skills and building the relationships, or ultimately around converting. And the data speaks for itself. Cost per hire using this approach tends to be about 40 to 80% less than average, which is pretty compelling. And as I alluded to before, with first year turnover, about 45% of all recent college grads, we see less than 2% for those students who are completing micro-internships. So what you're getting as part of this program is the opportunity to not just work with the individual Wayne State students on the projects, but you're also getting all of that other data to build the brand, to drive efficiency, improve conversion, cut costs, have better satisfaction, et cetera, et cetera. So the million-dollar question is always, how do we get started? Well, we tried to make it easy. First, send us your job description. As I said before, we have an entire team that takes those job specs for full-time roles or summer internships, or sometimes it's even just some bullet points, and crafts micro-internships that align. Micro-internships that don't require you to share information or access to systems or anything else. Projects that don't require you to handhold. Projects where you can very quickly look at the one-page or two-page deliverable and have a pretty good idea of a student's skills. And by the way, we love to be challenged. Send us the project, send us the job description that you think there's no way this will work. My guess is we'll have some pretty good ideas. We've been doing it a while. The second thing is, let us know about some of the goals you have. It could be that you're an organization based in the Upper Peninsula, but you're trying to recruit the Wayne State students, or you have this role that you just have trouble filling because students aren't aware of your brand. Let us know, and we're happy to help. Tell us about your other recruiting goals or challenges, if there's something you're struggling with. Again, we're happy to share not just what we're doing, but also the best practices that we're seeing. You're not alone. Everyone is going through this right now. And then finally, we all have we should and I shouldn't projects that we should go update our job descriptions, but we don't have enough hours in a day. Or I shouldn't be the one doing that because it's not the best use of my time, or I don't have the right skill set. Those projects are absolutely perfect for college students. And we know the Wayne State students are hungry to work on them. They're hungry to demonstrate their skills. They're hungry to explore career paths and build those relationships as they ultimately look to land what is that perfect role. And behind the scenes, through our partnership with Wayne State, they're seeing all of this. This is helping them both support their students, but also support you as valued employers, giving them insights so they can make sure their students are best prepared, helping counsel and guide them, and again, ultimately helping you with the recruiting efforts that you have. So with that, I'm going to open it up to questions. I saw a couple come through. Courtney asked, I know Oakland University has a micro-internship. Is that also sponsored by Parker Dewey? I'll have to look. I apologize. I don't know top of mind. I assume it is. Parker Dewey has students from over 5,900 post-secondary institutions, partnerships with about 1,000 colleges and universities. So my guess is they're working with us, but I have to look. Irrespective of if a school's formally working with us, you can still engage their students on micro-internships. One of the things I didn't mention is 100% of the students on our platform are here because they want to be here. We do not allow colleges or universities or classes or anyone else to require it. That's really, really important, because what it means is when the students are applying for your projects, they have actual interest in doing it. They're interested in your organization. They're interested in demonstrating their skills and working on the assignment. And that's really, really key. Again, especially in these days of the application avalanche where we're all overwhelmed by too many applications, but still ironically struggling to find the ones that sort of hit the bullseye of when they're graduating and skills and geographic preferences. The students on this platform are self-selecting in. Got another question. What separates this from gig work or Upwork, et cetera? I love that question Because to some extent, micro-internships are Upwork for college students. So they are short-term projects. But that's about the only place it's the similar. There's some big differences. First of all, 100% of the individuals on Parker Dewey are college students based in the US looking for full-time roles either now or in the future. They're working on these projects not as a side hustle to make a couple $100 here and there. They're doing it because they're authentically interested in building their resumes, getting to know employers, and demonstrating their skills. What that means for you as an employer is a couple things. First of all, you're getting higher quality work on the projects themselves. They're not motivated to just chew through it as fast as possible so they get paid. They want to do a great job because they want to prove themselves to you. Second is the intentionality around it being a recruiting tool. So Allison, I don't know enough about your role, if you're focused on campus recruiting or if you're an alum of the school looking for ways to give back or just a busy professional. But if you are focused on campus recruiting, the big difference is, again, this is a recruiting tool. There is no temp to perm fee. You're not paying a 30% disintermediation fee if you want to hire someone for a full-time role or summer internship. As one of my colleagues likes to say, we'll send chocolates, not a bill. Okay, senior tech recruiter. Perfect. This is a recruiting tool. The other part I would point to is this. It's all of the data. It's all of the data about the students, not just who complete your micro internships, but the students who apply. So when you're posting that project, maybe you don't pick a Wayne State student for whatever reason. You're still seeing insights on all of the Wayne State students who applied. So when you are on campus, you know these students have raised their hand. They're actually interested in your organization. You have insights on their skills. So again, this is much more of a recruiting tool, though certainly hiring managers or busy professionals appreciate that, yes, it can still help them get some work off their plate. It's that double benefit. I hope that answered your question, Allison. What other questions do we have? So Allison, since you shared you're a tech recruiter, and since I like to embarrass people, what I would say is either in the chat or feel free to email afterwards, send us one of the tech roles. Send us a really complicated tech role. I'm not technical, so I can't do anything with it, but we have an entire team that can show you, again, how projects can be used. I also love the question about, do we manage the payroll for the student? Yes, and that was one of those slides I glossed over, so I apologize. When the students are completing micro internships, they are employees or contractors of Parker Dewey itself. They are on our books. So from your perspective, no 1099, no W-2, no other worries about any of those other things. They are on our books. They are under NDA. They assign all of the work product to you or your organization. That is very intentional. And as I said, to the extent you want to hire them for a full-time role or summer internship or just ongoing part-time work at any point, you always have that option and there's no additional cost or fee. Again, we designed this so there was no HR or legal burdens for the company. The internal term for this is Jeff-proof. It has to be easy enough that Jeff would use it. If Jeff had to worry about figuring out 1099s or W-2s or had to pay a staffing firm fee, Jeff wouldn't do it. We made this easy. To Courtney's question, when we set up the projects, they are fixed, that they are based upon a fixed number of hours with a fixed fee, but the hours are estimates. So sorry if that wasn't clear. So for instance, we need someone to research and draft an article on best practices around blah, blah, blah. We think it's going to take about 15 hours to do. We're going to pay $300. That is a down the fairway, plain vanilla project we see all the time. The student will see the project, they see how much they'll be paid. If they're interested, they apply and answer the short question, and you get to pick who you want. Parker Dewey collects the payment from you. We pay the student. They are on our books. Whether it takes the student 15 hours to do or 14 or 16, you're paying the same amount. The student's being paid the same amount. We do that because we want to eliminate another point of friction. We don't want you stressing about well, the student said it took 20, but I think it only should have taken 15. And we want this to be easy. We want this to be simple. And again, we've been doing this long enough that we're pretty good at estimating the number of hours a project should take. We've done thousands and thousands and thousands of these. But again, we take care of all of it. By the way, we guarantee outcomes. So Courtney, if you work with a student on a micro internship and he or she ghosts or turns in something that's just garbage or clearly written by AI, we'll either refund you in full or you can pick another student, no questions asked. In 10 years of doing it, it's happened only a handful of times. What we'll typically see are situations like the one I was showing before. The student does a good job. Maybe it's not amazing, but gosh, it got me 80% of the way there. Or it may have been someone we were planning on spending a whole bunch of time interviewing. This helped us, again, their terms, not mine, dodge a bullet. Again, those are still good outcomes. And even with those costs embedded, we're still finding companies are saving 60, 70, 80% on that cost per hire. Allison, to your question, the average time between SOW, I assume that means when the project is posted and the student starts. Is that correct, Allison? Thank you. See, I told you I'm good at looking at two screens. The beauty of ADD. The average time, it's up to you. We'll see projects start the next day. So in the case of the question before where someone just needs that project done, I'm going to a conference on Monday, I need that list crunched, I can't wait. They'll post a project now and may pick someone even before the day is through. What we see more frequently when it's used by companies as a recruiting tool, they typically have a longer gap between when they post the project and the start date, because they're really interested not just in getting the 1 or 2 or 3 students who are going to do the project, but they're building that pipeline of other engaged students. Again, really that they can feed right into their applicant tracking system, both so when they're going to campus or if they're not able to be at campus. This is where, Allison, we'd love to talk with you a little bit about some of your goals. And talk about some strategies, because again, every company is different. We worked with one company where I thought we were going to have trouble filling it. They were looking for someone who could code in Python, could create data visualizations in Power BI, and by the way, also had to be a fluent Portuguese speaker. I thought we were going to have trouble filling it. In the words of the hiring manager, a few days later, they had 14 candidates, of which at least 10 of them would have been perfect. You'd be shocked. We also see situations where the company's saying, we have this role we're trying to fill in Wichita, Kansas, and we need students with ties to Wichita. We don't care where they go to school, who are graduating in the class of 2026 and have deep expertise in blank. No problem. We just need to understand the goals and we can help craft that. Some organizations want a lot of candidates. Some are focused on very, very few. The larger question is how many projects are left unfilled? Basically 0. The only time projects aren't kicked off is if the company changes its mind, which happens occasionally, but we have a big enough pool that it's not really difficult to get them filled. And what I love about it is the projects are filled not because the students are required to participate for a class or to graduate from their school. They're filled because the students are actually interested. Again, back to that course, that 95% of students want to be recruited this way. This is how they want to find those roles. We have millions of the students on the platform who are raising their hands saying, I want to be here. I want to work on these projects. I want to be recruited this way. But Allison, I'd also say getting a project posted takes you under a minute. I mean, literally, you can send us using the QR code what the job spec is. We can have the project posted for you, again, immediately. And you can see the students. If you do it yourself, it'll probably take you 5 minutes. It's very, very low lift. So even if the project is unfilled, you haven't wasted or spent that much time. But again, I'm pretty sure it'll be filled. Wow, that was a lot of great questions. Melinda, thank you. I am happy to know Oakland has partnered with us. again, it's one of those things we don't reach out to students and sort of beg them to be here, or allow universities to require it. We have the same approach with schools. We welcome colleges and universities with open arms. We love collaborating and partnering with them. We have an entire team that all they do is collaborate with the schools. And when we're partnering with schools like Wayne State, what's great about it is it best supports the employers because those schools are getting insights into your needs. Again, micro internships don't replace those relationships by any stretch. They enhance them. That way, that Wayne State can see that, gosh, XYZ company is really looking for students studying this area. Let the students at a certain club know that there's micro internships being made available, or might see that their liberal arts students are doing really, really well in manufacturing roles. Let's make sure the manufacturing companies are aware of that. Let's let them know. Or maybe they're finding their sophomore IT students' communication skills, the feedback is a little bit less than par. They're able to use that to coach both the individual student, but also to understand programmatically if they need to do more coaching or training on professionalism or communication. I saw the question, if a student takes more time allotted, will we need to pay the difference? No, no, no. Again, to the earlier question, sorry if I was confusing, all the projects are fixed fee and the time is just an estimate. What you're putting in from a time perspective, when do you want to kick off the project? So do I want someone to start tomorrow? Do I want someone to start next week or in 2 weeks or whenever, and when it's due? And then there's the estimate of how many hours I think it'll take. I think it'll take 15. Again, whether it takes them 14 hours or 16 or something different, you're paying the same amount, the student is paying the same amount. We're trying to get rid of any incentive to cheat, but also any potential point of friction. My favorite story around this was we had a company post a really technical project they needed a student to do. I think it was expected to take like 30 hours. A student was selected and literally in the morning, that afternoon had submitted the project is complete. Again, a project that was supposed to take 30 hours was submitted as complete 5 or 6 hours later. We emailed the student, we're like, is it done? And it's like, yeah. Okay, we reached out to the company and like, did the student turn in real work? And the company's like, oh yeah, it's amazing. We're like, okay, clearly you misspec'd it. We'll just refund you the difference. We'll still pay the student the full amount out of our pocket. But yeah, clearly just the wrong number of hours. Like, no, 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 no. We thought this was going to take manual. The student wrote some crazy script using blah, blah, blah that was able to do it faster. They're like, not only did he get it done, we now never need to do this project again because of what the student built. We want to give him a bonus. Like, no one here is trying to take advantage, and that's very intentional. Back to the question about Upwork or Fiverr, because the students are using this as part of their job search process. It's just a different kind of behavior. Even if your organization's not hiring for a full-time role, or you are the student and realize it may not be the right fit, the student still values that relationship with you, that you could potentially be a reference or referral in the future, that you're someone who they might be able to get to know. They want to do a great job. And by the way, when they're working on these projects, they're also engaging with faculty members at their school, getting insights. They're engaging with others. So again, we're seeing all of those right behaviors. I think I answered all the questions. Any others? No. Amazing. Thank you so much for taking time on this. I think it's Tuesday. I really appreciate the great questions in here and comments. Thank you. And again, my question to you, or my ask of you, is please, again, try to challenge us. I'm going to drop the link in the chat so you have it, or you can use the fancy QR code. Put in the job description, upload the PDF, or put in the link, or even just a couple of bullets. Challenge us. Tell us what your goals are. Tell us about a role that's difficult to fill, or a geography you're struggling with, or something else. We love, love, love making suggestions. You're not on the hook for everything. There's no commitment. We're simply happy to share the ideas and obviously would love to help however we can. With that, this concludes the webinar. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today, and we'll send out the follow-up post haste. With that, enjoy the rest of your Tuesday.